Cool, we're good to go. Let's hop in. Welcome to the Save Greendale Committee. Hello, human beings. It's been over a decade since Community premiered, so we're revisiting every episode to look at both the good and the bad and attempt to save Greendale one episode at a time. So if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, not a lot seems different yet. But if you're watching it on YouTube, it's on YouTube, and you can see us now. Hello.
Better or worse.
Welcome. Yeah. Welcome to the Save Greendale Committee video version. And I'll probably even just cut this out of the podcast version, so they won't even hear this. But yeah.
If you want some video exclusive content, like explaining that video is a video, come to YouTube.
That's explaining what you're already looking at, then here you are.
And then make fun of all the audio people. You go find them and say, hey, go watch the YouTube videos, like and subscribe, or whatever YouTube people say.
But you don't say that on podcasts.
Point up and down to the links to the other episode. Keep all the hand motions in.
Everywhere that link to random stuff. We found Joel McHale's baby pictures.
This is a like one of those YouTube like drama videos.
Drama
go
Mondays.
over go over the episode like it's YouTuber drama. Yeah. So this week, obviously, Bo is back. After I brought him on as a co-host, he decided to go away for several weeks and not appear on a few episodes. So,
well, if it makes a difference, I am now on the East Coast. We were in the same time zone, and I was very sick that one day. That's the one West Coast time I was just not able to stand up. So that was a valid excuse, I think. But yeah, moving.
That's fair. That's fair.
Happy to be here. Happy to be back. And from what I can tell, my schedule is going to be a lot more like balanced. So I can actually rely on like, oh, I'll be free on these days, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's introduce our two guests here because they've both been standing there very politely. So we have brought back two of our favorite guests that we've had on the show, both Holly Jordan and Alex from 6 Seasons in a Podcast. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Love you guys.
Alex has not been on since the end of season 1, if I am remembering correctly, and Holly, we had you on earlier in this season. So part of the fun of this new format of the Save Greendale Committee is bigger panels, more voices to talk to. So we're doing intermediate documentary filmmaking today, which is a great episode that changes up the format a lot. So I thought, that goes well with a format change here as well. So yeah. This was written by Megan Gans and directed by Joe Russo to community, veterans and people behind some of the best episodes and, episodes that really define the show. So I think it works that they're coming in and doing an episode that really changes it up a bit. So we can just start with that format change. How does everyone feel about community doing a documentary, especially at a time, as Abed points out, where it's, kind of was used as a crutch in that era of TV between like Modern Family and The Office and Parks and Rec. That's not fair to those shows specifically, but it definitely became like a kind of trend of everyone doing these like talking head things. And
we don't know what to do with this premise. Let's
just
just make them talk to a camera for a while. Like, we don't know how to give this character
yes
a good source of like how to get their emotions out. Let's just let them say I'm sad to the camera.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So starting with Holly, how do you feel about shows that use this format in general? And do you think it works for community?
I am such a sucker for fourth wall breaks, period. So Deadpool, of course, being like, I think the quintessential version of that, but then also like House of Cards, having those like aside moments. I think it allows us to see the actors interacting in a very different way. It's almost like theater in some ways, because you have that like mindful eye contact with the audience. As to whether it works, I mean, it works just as well as any time that they mix up the format, because I feel like the authors of the episode, the set designers, even the actors themselves are so familiar with TV that they're able to do it in a way that is still unique while really paying respect. Like, I think the best example is when Shirley decides on her own to do her own talking head, right? Like, she's playing with the format and pointing out to Abed he's not doing it as well as he should be. So they still figure out a way to make it just as community as anything else.
I also feel like the fact that Shirley had to go out of her way to do it herself kind of pokes at the idea of, I mean, like you said, like Abed is not doing this perfectly. And to me, that also you can extrapolate, like the director has so much say in what actually goes into the documentary that you don't get a chance to think about what's cut out. And I feel like that scene specifically did a good job of, like making me go back and think like, oh yeah, in that one, in the WeWork documentary that I just watched, like what 5 people could have completely changed the narrative of that story, and they just chose not to speak to them, or they were busy and didn't want to make the time or something.
Especially when Abed is like, I'm just here. I'm not a character. I'm not trying to advance the plot, but he clearly is. Just like any documentary director, they have a vision, they have a story they want to tell, and sometimes that means that other voices have to be left out just because they don't fit into the director's vision, and that's disappointing, especially in the documentary format where things are, I don't want to say ad lib, but like extemporaneous. You're getting like insights into human beings, but we might see insights that Abed didn't at this point.
Yeah.
And him as a filmmaker, we get his perspective a lot more in the last episode you were on, Holly, where he's Messianic Myths and Ancient Peoples, where he's, doing his Jesus movie. And I think it's funny how he tries to kind of be very like the complete opposite of that, not put himself at the center of the story. But then we see both in this episode and the one in season 3 with the commercial shoot where he's just, he can't stop himself. He's making his Abed movie, no matter whether it's the documentary or the, self-aggrandizing Jesus movie. It's still, Abed. Abed's got a perspective, and apparently that doesn't include Shirley's opinion, so she gets left out.
Have any of you seen the Harmontown documentary?
I started it.
And
then fell asleep.
Well, it's very if you know the characters from
glowing review, Bo.
I start documentaries at 3 a.m. It's like I started a documentary on the guy that conducted the Nuremberg trials and had scary dreams. Like it was it's a thing that I need to break. It's a
great pre-bed comfort viewing before bed.
In general, documentaries are pretty chill. Like even like Ken Burns' Vietnam, like it's obviously disturbing, but like the voices are soothing. You just gotta like ignore the gunfire and napalm. But I'm sorry to cut you off. Harmontown documentary.
Oh no, that's right. It gave me a chance to forget their names of the characters, and so I Spencer is the name of the character that I was forgetting. So Spencer and Jeff are two of the folks that are on Harmontown, and the Harmontown it's about the total show, but you don't get a lot about Jeff as a character, but you get a lot of this narrative of Spencer, who was basically plucked out of the audience and thrust on stage, and then became this, kind of sensation of being a part of Harmontown and that kind of thing. And I think that's what you guys are saying, is that there's in this episode, you've only got 22 minutes to show, for it, but we cut out, Abed is not intentionally, but for his narrative really, cuts out certain people and then thrusts, Troy as a major part of that, and Jeff is a major part of that narrative, and we lose different characters. Annie's a little bit, and Britta's a little bit, and of course Shirley is just this tiny bit. But the documentarian is making this decision to craft the narrative. Basically these two main points of Troy suffering and Jeff suffering, to when they meet, or potentially will meet their, father figures, I suppose, right? In ways, I don't know which
story in this episode.
Yeah, I don't understand it, but yeah. But I do think. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, that's actually really interesting when you think about the dynamic between like framing their bequeathments from Pierce as like surrogate father figures that stress them the hell out. Viewing their relationship with Pierce as like with Troy, like he lived with Pierce. So they said like, oh, it's more like a Batman and Shaft type relationship. But, like, I do get the sense that like there is like Pierce giving lessons to Troy, and then like ultimately when he future spoilers when he passes away and gives I just want to call him Gambino, but gives Troy the childish tycoon. Like, I feel like that was like a paternal, fatherly, like, hey, here's this relationship that we have, and this is like the full circle of where we came. And then the idea of, I mean, the episode really plays heavily into this, but Jeff and Pierce being father and son, like that dynamic. So like, I honestly didn't think of the idea of LeVar Burton being the father figure for Troy, but like that level of not wanting to disappoint him, and all of that emotion behind it. I see that now.
We also see a lot of Pierce's father issues in this episode that then play out later in the show. Like the Jeff refers to the bequeathments as Pierce's complicated acts of psychological vengeance. The exact same kinds of behaviors that Pierce's father showed him as well. Like just all of the putting down and liking. God, I just lost his brother's name. I hate when I do this live.
Gilbert,
kind of putting Gilbert first while simultaneously dissing Gilbert constantly. Like, get all these things that set up Pierce, and then, Pierce is faking being Jeff's dad. Jeff murders his father by punching the crap out of him in the car. And then next season, we get the flip of it where Jeff kills Pierce's dad.
He literally murdered a father.
Exactly. So, if anybody's practicing complicated acts of psychological vengeance, by the end of it, it's Jeff by completely flipping it around. So,
well, and it's weird though, because Pierce doesn't hold a grudge. His father held grudges, and he'll always hate him for that. But I tweeted that out this morning because as I was watching,
saw you did. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, this is such good writing, man. That's such a good joke."
The delivery of everything Pierce says in this episode, like Chevy Chase is a person, put him aside. His delivery in this episode, like honestly, the more I rewatch this show, the more I'm just like, okay, like. There's a lot more nuance to his performances that I want to give him credit for, but so it is bequeathed, and then he just stares at the camera is like one of my favorite lines in this episode.
Yeah, or even when Annie says she's crying on the inside and he just goes gross. He has so many. I completely agree with you, Bo, and it's something that like I'm always reconciling with when I'm rewatching his seasons, because like you when you know how he acted off camera, you just assume he wasn't trying when he was on camera, but like you don't get the performance you get out of him in these first 3 seasons without like someone who's like paying attention to the material and like trying. Like he maybe didn't understand it, but like he at least knew what he had to do in every episode, even if he didn't know what the hell the dialogue by the other characters like meant. I mean, especially
he like only watches the episodes where he's in it and then skips to where he's in the show. So like he understands Pierce, but like probably not the community at large. Like if you ask him who Magnitude was, he'd be like, was he the black kid on the podium yelling things? I think so.
I noticed that. One of my favorite reoccurring like things in the episode commentaries is whenever Chevy's on, and like he'll remember someone's name or just point out something in the background, and he'll be like, "See, I noticed that," or "See, I remember that." Like literally proving to the rest of the cast members that he gives a shit.
It's like that line in Mean Girls towards the end where it's like, I like this song. I hate this song. I know this song. Versus Walt would be like, I recognize that those are words.
Yeah. God. So we talked a bit about the kind of format change here, and we Abed's perspective is something we've talked a bit about, but I want to specifically talk about how his kind of arc as a filmmaker has gone on, because in season 1 we see him creating like his student films about the study group, and they're kind of like sitcom-y. I mean, it's just literally him making Community inside of Community, and then in season 2 he starts getting a little more ambitious, I guess will be my nice way of putting it. And by the end of Community, he's like going off and trying to make like sci-fi movies, and like Abed seems to be Yeah, Abed seems to be into like everything, so it's hard to like pin down what his voice as an artist is. But at least at this point in the show, like, what do we think is Abed's like goal as a filmmaker, both in making this and just in general? Like, what do you think this episode in this format shows about Abed's character at this point?
I mean, I feel like since Alex, you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Just to be quick, I think that at this point, it kind of just shows that he wants to just create something. And I feel like the episode where we meet his dad kind of showed that, like, you know, filmmaking is his means of communicating with the world. So like he just wants to be heard, and he just wants to, you know, be out there. And I feel like at any opportunity, any time an opportunity presents itself, he'll take that. If it's, hey, I'm going to make a giant movie where I have the entire school's attention, or if it's just, hey, I'm going to grab Garrett and Pavel, we're going to go to a hospital and watch Pierce fake die for a bit. Like, I think he's just trying to put something out there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And what I think why it's so sporadic in what he's doing, because I'd really like to look at his course assignment, his course load, and go like, oh, that's because he was in documentary film, 101, like, or in this case, intermediates documentary filmmaking. Like I think what we're seeing is, oh, he's just in a specific course, and this is his class assignment is to make this thing, and he's trying to reach the world and communicate to and with the world, and it just happens to be the medium of choice is, whatever class he's in. That's what we're getting, the version of it. I mean, that's what I think.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah. I was thinking about this a little bit this morning. Like, the first real film we get is that one with him trying to explain the relationship with his father and his mother and breaking up, and using Jeff and Brenna to do it. Abed starts with a story he knows, just like any film writer or novelist or whatnot. But I think a lot of times film is the only way he can show emotion, even if it's someone else's story. And so as he evolves, like that first episode where he does the film about his parents, it's very short. It's an assignment. We kind of know that. But then as he evolves, we get the Jesus episode, and he's thinking about format a little bit more, and then it goes off the rails. Like, this is the first time I think we see him with a format in mind, a mission in mind. And even though it kind of goes off the rails when it does, it's in ways that he emotes and that he's trying to show his story through his friends. And I think it shows that regardless of what format he's doing, it often revolves around family and the interactions with family, even if it's just the study group family.
I love that this episode kind of shows how Pierce-like Abed can be, because one of my favorite things, we talked about Chevy's performance in this, I love how in control he sounds and feels as soon as the study group walks into his hospital room. Like, he's just like, oh, the pills took me out. Like, he's overplaying it so much for effect. And Abed's the only one who knows like everything that's going on. And like, he doesn't say anything. The film is more important, like he's just as controlling as Pierce is and enjoys it. And it even goes back to the Dungeons and Dragons episode where like Abed could have at any point as the DM stepped in and stopped Pierce from doing what he was doing, but he didn't, because his control and like the story was more important than what was actually happening with the people. And it in both cases it works out because like the story was necessary.
Does that make Abed kind of like a psychopath, like a little bit, or sociopath?
Sociopath.
Like it's. I mean, I don't want to dig into it too deeply. But that's kind of, yeah. I mean, he allows pain to happen, and maybe he's not equipped for it. So maybe I should give him a break. Maybe he just doesn't know what to do with it. So that's. I'm kind of talking myself out of this.
So I used to work in,
I think
like,
it does go back to.
I used to work in unscripted TV, and like that's, to be good at that job, you have to turn that part of your brain off, because like with a lot of shows with like real people, it's producers in the background creating crazy stories for these individuals that they're just feeding, and then you get them on stage together and then they start screaming at each other. Like it's like very extremely manipulative, and that, like, I feel like Abed doing that, like, for better or worse for the people involved, kind of indicates that like he's good at this. Like he knows what he's doing. He knows how to, he might not be able to recognize when someone's angry, but like when he's filmmaking, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not the one who asked.
That's his way of connecting.
Yeah. And I was going to say, he's not the one who asked Pierce or got the study group to do the Dungeons and Dragons. He's not the one who, asked Pierce to set up the bequeathing from, and do all this. So, I mean, it's, I don't want to give too much, shade to Abed but he certainly goes along for the ride. So.
Well, that's what I think, and I realized this when we were doing our Dungeons and Dragons episode, that like in that role, he's less of a traditional Dungeons and Dragons DM that you would see in real life, and he's acting much more like a director, like a film director, and it's the same thing here. He's a hired director, like he's literally a director for hire in these situations, which is like very, I think, realistic and kind of goes to show his skill versus like when he was doing entirely his own project that went off the rail. I mean, technically Shirley like hired him as a director, but like he had full creative control and took it and ran with it. So in this situation where he's like, doing something for Pierce, but at the same time in season 3 with the commercial shoot, there's a point where he completely takes over and he's no longer like doing what the dean asked him to, and he's now creates his own version of the commercial. So there's a development there, but yeah. It's
also yet another example of somebody asking him to film something for them and not getting paid for it. Like we have 5 for Jeff's like lawyer commercial, the check's in the mail, right? But like for this one, it's yet again another example. Like we have 2 examples of Pierce dying and Abed getting nothing from it. Like Abed doesn't get a bequeathal or bequeathment in this episode.
He gets the sperm.
He gets the sperm in the next one, but only because everybody else gets sperm. I never understood you and you're crazy. Here's some sperm. Like whatever.
Just a nod.
Like he doesn't even get that in this episode. Like he doesn't get crafty. He doesn't get per diem. Like there's nothing that indicates that Pierce is using him like he's using everybody else in the episode.
Well, and that's why I like that this episode connects the 2 of them in that like kind of controlling role. It's because like they like would never, like they have the least chance of being friends outside the study group out of anyone in the study group. Like I think even like Pierce and Shirley have like they've even gone on some side adventures that we don't see. Like but Pierce and Abed just have nothing to connect on emotionally, and they're just like on such different wavelengths, but they're still just 2 like forces in the study group. They're 2 people that like create story for everyone else, and so when they're kind of on the same team sort of, it creates some of the most like absurd and drawn out scenarios for everyone. Yeah,
it's just now occurring to me, does anyone in the study group have a good relationship with their parents? It like just hit me. I don't think anyone
like
in the
Troy
show
doesn't like hate his parents, but he doesn't really like talk about them a lot.
Other than just they're super repressive Jehovah's Witnesses. That's really the insight we get into them.
He doesn't they don't show him as being like too hurt by it, but they don't really get that into his Jehovah's Witness like background or anything.
Yeah, the only like family we see of his is his grandmother.
Yeah.
And I feel like they ramped her up to 11. So like I don't know if that trickled down to his parents or.
Well, actually, his mom seems pretty cool because this in the video game episode, this is the whole line where he's like, "My mom always told me that my video game knowledge would pay off. I never."
But he was also held back and then lied to about it for like until he was 21.
I think there was good intentions there.
No, you just tell your kid he got held back. Like it's okay. You'll see your friends in recess. It's all good. Like I say this not being held back without kids, so I don't know how. Never mind. Never mind. I don't know. Maybe she's the best. I don't know.
Do we ever get insights into Shirley's parents? We get her in-laws, her husband's family.
Yeah, her in-laws seem terrible, but I guess they don't.
So is this another example of how Shirley doesn't get to tell her story? Like we don't get her parents in 6 seasons.
Well, that's the thing. She's the parent, so it's just. I guess they never felt the need to like talk about her parents, but yeah. I mean, now that you mention it, every other character has, except for I guess Troy, has like specific like plot line associated with their parents. Like Annie gets cut off, Britta's self cut her off. Like there's all, obviously Jeff and Abed have their stories, but yeah,
I mean, Shirley she spends time at the community center as a kid,
Mhm.
but that's about the extent of, what you get from, I don't know if there's any implication in that her parents are busy, not around, like Jeff is at the community center as a kid because his dad's gone. I don't know if we can extrapolate anything. I don't think we maybe should, but
I feel like we get more about Andre than we do about Shirley over the course of the series. Like, I feel like I can piece together a timeline for Andre better than I can for Shirley.
I mean, hell, we get details about the dean's mom. Like, oh, all we know is she has huge fingers, right? But like, that's like such a random parent detail to throw out, to not have this backstory for such a major character.
Yeah, in some ways, Shirley has the most like life events happen to her during the course of the show. Like, she gets married again, she has a kid. Like, these are like, this is more significant like life things than most of what happens to like Jeff even, like he changes as a person, but like,
Abed just like goes to college over the course of the show. He just goes to college, that's it. Or I guess his mom like has a new family, but that all happened off screen.
Yeah.
And in some ways, Shirley is the most adult of all of them. She's a good mom, she can do school and everything else, so maybe they don't need to talk about her relationship with her parents because she's moved on from it in ways that the other characters have kind of been in arrested development and haven't completely moved on to adulthood.
I don't mean to do this, but when I was talking to Yvette, we talked about Yvette.
Brag.
We talked about Shirley's some of her backstory and actually, like projecting on where she would be, and I actually think that Shirley needed the study group the least. That if in reflection of that, that's probably why we get the least details about her, perhaps. Because if you take, she certainly, there was value for her. She got stuff from the relationships with Annie and Britta and Jeff and even Abed and Troy, and even Pierce. Theoretically, there's at least some affirmation of who she is from Pierce. But like, take her out of the study group and I think she would be fine. She would have done fine. That would have done, been herself, and she'll go on to be successful, regardless of the study group. Whereas other members of the study group, like Jeff, really needed the study group.
And I would just remember like season 1 though, like Shirley had a previous group of friends that don't like her anymore because she gossips too much. And like, this episode, the whole theme around it is that she thinks her family of the study group doesn't like her, doesn't talk well about her. Like, when we first get Shirley, her family life is falling apart. She's trying to reinvent herself. And I don't think she would have been able to do that without the support of the study group. So I think that that's what they give her.
And I certainly don't mean like she's, like I said, I don't think she didn't get value from the experience, but I think I could see her still being lonely and getting through those things. But to the extent like some of the other members really, really needed the study group. And when you take them out of that, I think, Jeff still needs, the nipple dippers at the end of the story.
Nipple dippers.
I think Britta still needs that group, and I could see Shirley just being successful, and that's why she goes off and is able to do her own thing. But I don't know, that's what I kind of take from the progression and trajectory of her story.
I agree. And while we're talking about her, I do want to point out one of my cools, and we can jump into that, is just the way that I wrote in my notes that this is Shirley's guilt Super Bowl. Like, she's just weaponizing it to such a high, like on such a high level. Like, she is expert level guilting these people. And the best part is it doesn't work because there's literally nothing for them to admit to. But like, some of the shit she says in that waiting room to these guys is, I think, some of her best acting. And I
just
even
the
love
smile, the stressed out smile that she gives over, just like.
I love that she does the same thing at the second bequeathment too. Like, she's like, I can be passive aggressive sometimes. don't everybody disagree at once.
Yeah.
Did it again. Like, I mean, like literally calling back to the last time she did this. And just like knowing that she has this ability to do that like little sing-songy sweet voice when she's being utterly cruel. And then we find out later that that's her like sexy voice with Andre.
Yeah.
Such a bad retcon at that point when you go back and hear how often she uses that.
Yeah.
Why are you being sexy with Leonard? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I've had to sort of rewrite that in my head is like, that's her just disarming voice. And in the context of Andre, it's for sex. But in the context of everyone else, it has different meanings.
Hopefully.
I mean, with Shirley specific, and this is kind of like, I feel like this was Yvette Nicole Brown's like typecasting at the time, at least. Like, she was just the very, like, just her character on Drake and Josh, just very sweet to one brother and then fucking fiery at the other one. Like, so I feel like the writers maybe just weren't sure what to do in terms of finding the middle ground. I feel like we get a little bit of it later on, but like in terms of the Leonard, you're completely right. But the first line that I think of when she speaks to Leonard is during the Halloween episode, "Back your pumpkin ass up or I'm about to make a pie," or something along those lines, like something extremely threatening. And I'm like, yeah, she only has
2 gears.
Yeah, it's the 2 gears. And like, if it's not violence, then it has to be sexy voice.
And it's so like angry about very weird things sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, you guys remind me of Sam and Diane. I hated Simon Diane. Like, just, and it's visceral. Like, they upset her.
I mean, even in the we're gonna kind of future spoilers into I guess like episode 18, right? The one where she's trying to get Chang to sign the paperwork. Just when she tells Jeff, like, I know you're not going to make a pregnant woman like walk this distance, and then I know you're not going to make a pregnant woman storm off right now. Like, okay,
Yeah.
the first one I buy, but the storm off, like, that's just you're milking it for a bit.
Well, that's where I will. I think that it's kind of interesting how they're able to, even though she has the 2 notes, there's like variety in the 2 notes. Like, she can be angry guilty or she can be sweet guilty. She can be like, you know, like this, like what she does in this episode is the same thing as what she does in the line you were talking about, but it's a completely different energy and they're both like equally as effective. Yeah, anyone else want to hop in with a cool?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of talked about it, but my first cool was just how perfectly balanced this episode is with cooperative calligraphy. And really you can balance it with a couple other episodes that are really dialogue heavy and really focused on the characters. You know, cooperative calligraphy, you know, you have a little bit of that, you know, you've got the conflict, you have people cracking and admitting to things. You know, surely, you know, that's where we find the pregnancy test, you know, girl. And in you also have we'll go to season 4 with the puppet episodes where they're all around the study table kind of cracking. And this is one of my second cool, which is everyone kind of cracks their shell and lets out, you know, a little bit of what's going on underneath. And, you know, I liked to see, you know, that turmoil from each person. You know, you have Britta kind of coming to grips with the fact that she's far more capitalist than she'd ever want to admit, you know, or at least pragmatically capitalist, because she's like, I have to pay my bills and I've got the, you know, I've got these realities in my life. And, you know, and, you know, a bunch of the other characters, you can go through each one, but, you know, I like these episodes. These are tend to be, I've had forgotten how much I liked this episode. When you put in all the other homage episodes and, you know, even when you have these episodes like cooperative calligraphy, some of the other documentary episodes, it's interesting to see like how the gluttony of really good community episodes that we have. And so we talk badly about some episodes. It's like, well, there's literally, you know, 90 episodes where we could say these are really amazing episodes. So very interesting. Mm-hmm. And I'll shut up.
I also really sorry, Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, as watching this episode, you know, I'm like trying to make sure I have like good and bad things to say, and like the only thing I could say about this episode that makes it maybe not one of my personal favorites is purely that because of this like documentary format, it just slows the pace of the jokes in a way that Community like is normally very snappy with its dialogue, and it's still there in this episode, but you know, it's just like a different tone that's, you know, more like other shows, and that's entirely intentional, and it adds variety to the show that makes those other episodes that I love more good. So it's like even an episode that might not be like my personal favorite still functions to make other episodes more my favorite. And it's like Community really works and builds off of itself in a way that I think a lot of other shows don't, and it's something I love about watching them for the podcast, is that like I'm really seeing how they're all iterating off of each other in big ways. Holly,
I mean,
what you were going to say before? Yeah,
I agree with you that the pacing gets off because of the style, but I think the benefit of that is we get so many pithy zingers in this episode because they don't have the time. Like, I mean, just little tiny things. Like, everybody, of course, goes to the "you can't disappoint a picture" scene because it's just so iconic. But the line in that kills me more is, "I've told Pierce 1,000 times." Like, how often are they genuinely talking about how much he wants this picture? Like, they had that long summer of living together. I'm sure they talked about it a lot, but like, this is a common conversation they're having. It's such a throwaway. And like, another one is just like, they have that line of like, when LeVar Burton shows up, I can't remember who says it, but they're like, "Is there anyone he can't produce?"
Yeah, Annie.
And who is it? Yeah. And then later, you know, we get the Sophie B. Hawkins episode where he can make her show up out of nowhere. And it just makes you wonder how many other times in other scenes we don't see are random celebrities showing up because of Pierce.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I honestly, I that's such a like small line that I forget about it. Like so one of my cools is like just the fact that Troy reacts so differently than everyone else, because I feel like this was such a specific, like with Troy, the fact that it was so precise, and also like, because it's LeVar Burton, like, and also LeVar Burton's one of my other cools, but I feel like we're gonna have just an entire section on LeVar Burton in the show. Like the fact that like, and just they gave so much space for Donald Glover to just go off, just be crazy. Like him in the bathroom, him sitting there singing in the fetal position, like it's so good. And I laugh every time. I feel like it'll get old eventually, but it just hasn't yet.
And I noticed today,
Yeah,
like I actually went back and watched it twice. Troy begins to cry at the exact same moment when LeVar starts singing it. Like, it's what triggers him, but he has to keep that poker face. But it is the exact same spot. And it's just only Donald Glover would make a point of doing something like that. And I love it.
Yeah, and I love that this episode gave us a new hilarious Donald Glover crying. Like, this is distinct from some of his season 1 cries, you know? Like, this is a very, yeah, like when he's like shaking. Like, this seems much more raw and real and like something that he's been bottling
He's
up.
been doing it all season too. I mean, the whole like, my entire brain is crying. Like, this,
Yeah.
just let him scream whenever he wants to. Thank God.
Set phasers to love me.
Yeah, it's one of the best lines.
He's pretty broken in this one, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, do we want to just talk about LeVar in depth right now? Like, I feel like we all have thoughts. So, I mean, I feel like he was such a perfect presence because he's so chill and like normal for Kunta Kinte, but like his presence just kind of contrasted with the study group. Like, this is just like a, hey, I don't know what's going on. I just need some, and everyone is going through the worst day of their life. Like, like someone's, yeah, so I got hired by some guy that's dying, but he's not actually dying because some kid wants to see me, but he doesn't actually want to see me. Like, and his performance and staying that chill the entire time was amazing, I think.
Yeah, and as much as I love, obviously, the Troy and LeVar stuff, I just got to point out Britta and LeVar, that whole scene is fantastic. Just her talking head after of like, can you imagine bouncing a check to Kunta Kinte?
I remember when that aired, like I was watching it live and just going, I don't think Britta can say that. And then LeVar says it later. Okay, am I allowed to laugh now? I don't know if I'm allowed to laugh at this joke. It's just so much of Community for me in general, but like the fact that LeVar justified it for me makes me so grateful.
What do you say? More fish for Kunta?
And that was an ad lib too. That was, I think in the script it was like more fish for LeVar or something, and he added that.
Funny.
Yeah. So more reasons to love him.
I do
Love
love that
Jeopardy.
this season was the season where actors we hadn't seen in a while kind of made a resurgence. Like it was the Betty White moment where you're like, oh yeah, Betty White.
Yeah.
And then she just exploded. And like, I
Mhm.
don't remember the last time I'd seen LeVar Burton. I mean, obviously Star Trek had been off forever. Reading Rainbow was starting to reboot at this point, and then they did that entire campaign to bring it back. But Donald Glover
Yeah.
ended up reading one of the stories and everything. So like, it's funny how the show ends up like not necessarily relaunching people's careers, but reminding you of enough of them that you're like, oh, cool. And then it works moving forward.
I mean, just from my
Maybe
perspective,
on
obviously
Jeopardy.
as a huge
Yeah,
yeah,
fingers
hopefully.
crossed. Real talk.
I really think like Community did, at least in this case, I think it did play a big part in his kind of like resurgence. Like at least I think it reminded a lot of people about Reading Rainbow.
Yes.
And like, you know, I think in a way, like the way like Community fans just fixate on specific things, like I think we're seeing that a bit now with the Jeopardy stuff. Like I see a lot of Community fans, and like Yvette is like all over that. Like she's like his #1 like fan in that push. Like she's tweeting about him for Jeopardy like all the time, and it's amazing. I love seeing that support. But yeah.
What did Frankie, again, cutting to season 6 at this point, but like Frankie gave some like valuation of the school that was like, they're like, we found a specific subsect of like the people in this this school that are really into things that are like a lot gross and weird. And we just need to harness that. Like, I feel like that was just Dan Harmon being like, or just the writers being like, hey, so we understand that this is our fan base. Like it might not be the biggest, but we have the loudest, most rowdy bunch of people that are dedicated and like are willing to, you know, promote the show. So like, yeah, I definitely feel like Community had some role to play in the resurgence of certain celebrity. I feel like Betty White would like, she's just timeless in general, but like LeVar
she
Burton,
was,
like,
but she hadn't
She was
been
on
doing
like 3
anything for
NBC
long.
shows at that time.
Yeah, but like
I remember
NBC,
that
like,
week she
got
was
her.
also on like 30 Rock and some other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
I think she
Funny.
also hosted SNL around then too.
Yeah.
the Mother's
Yeah,
Day.
it was like a whole
that
like
was a good
weekend
one.
of Betty White. Yeah.
And it's not the only example of it in the episode too. Like we get that throw out to Firefly for no reason. Let's be real. There's no reason for them to bring that up. Like we're gonna stage it to look like a suicide caused by like Firefly had been on forever at that point, you know. And don't get me wrong, it's my favorite show, so I like lose it every time. But it's a recurring theme with them. I mean, we get the references to the Cape later and to Cougar Town, like acknowledging the other fan bases that are just as rabid and validating them. I mean, Inspector Spacetime and Doctor Who and everything else.
I did watch a little bit of the Cape as like I think I watched the first 3 or 4 episodes. Like I watched enough to be like, all right, like I can see myself getting into this. Like Keith David, all right, like some dude that's dressed as a chess piece, all right, okay. Like and then it lost me. But then seeing it pop up again was amazing.
But have you watched My Dinner
liked
with
it.
Andre?
I have not.
Nope.
No, I'm sorry.
No, I've seen The Cape, but not My Dinner with
I've
Andre.
watched My Dinner with Andre.
Yeah.
It's on HBO Max. I made the pilgrimage, went there and back. You can watch like the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes, and then you've got the movie.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Just
Like a
like the
basketball
entire MCU.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just start with Robert Downey Jr. in the desert, end with oh god. Now I'm all upset. I mean, speaking
Bo,
of, like,
do you want to throw out another cool here?
yeah, just I cutting to like the very end. I feel like Abed's little like summary of what happened, like specifically just the shot of him, Garrett, and Pavel in the bathroom taking the bow. I was like, I don't know why, but that's a really wholesome moment that I don't know. Like, even when I'm not thinking about the show, every once in a while, I'm just like, oh yeah, that was a nice little. That's nice. Just like it made me feel like there were real people that were having just like all these people are having a chaotic day, and they're just like, yeah, we're just making a movie, man. Like it just seemed like such a wholesome bit that probably didn't even need to be in the episode, honestly, but like it just made it for me. Like made, you know, the show's about family and wholesomeness, not actually tearing each other apart. And the shot
Pavel
of
scene. It's Pavel. Pavel gives us that every like anytime he's on camera. I'm just like, oh, what a sweet scene! Like
honestly,
the rain in season 5 when Abed has to apologize to his girl.
Oh yeah,
Larson, yay! And stuff. Pavel always brings that little bit of like old cheesy rom-com or like 90s nostalgia that I just
extra sleepy.
Bad blankets, bro.
Well, and that's what I love that this episode does differently from like the other like documentary style shows, is that Abed and the crew is like directly acknowledged. Like I know The Office made that a thing in like the last season, but like, you could go the run of that show. Like for years, because I've never seen The Office from beginning to end, for years, just having seen like random episodes, I never really knew like, oh yeah, do they know they're in a documentary or not? And like, I think in Modern Family, it's never addressed. Like they'll look directly at the camera in the same way they do on The Office, but like, there's no like actual reference to the camera people or anything like that. And this is like, it's using the kind of like the format, but it's not doing it in a way that feels gimmicky because we're seeing the camera crew. They're characters in the show that we know already, and they have a point of view. So it's like, even though we're like visually getting what those other shows are doing, it's still very different because it's it's using the tools in the community toolbox as opposed to completely doing just ripping off what those shows do.
I mean, it's also like Abed addresses it during the last monologue where he's just like, yeah, you can just have like voiceover with clips of people doing random things, and then it all kind of
that walking out of the bathroom.
I feel like that in combination with the bow at the end kind of like reinforces this is Abed's like, sure, it's a documentary. It's Abed's story. He is telling a story right now. He's communicating something. And I feel like it was very on the nose, but it worked for me.
Exact tone and meter as his closing monologue in the season 5 opener, the reboot, and like there's no reason he's doing it by then. Like, and literally the shtick is like they go to that laptop screen. It's like, yeah, Zach Braff does it in every episode. It's really a nice way to close episodes. And that 3.5 seasons later, they continue to pick up that joke. Like, there's so many moments, and I think it's just Megan Gann's episodes in general that subsequent episodes tie back to, because she establishes characters so well in teeny tiny moments. And there's so many grounding moments for these characters in this episode. And I love piecing those things together, not just cooperative polygraphy. I don't know how that word is said, later on for the next set of segments, but there's so many others in this too. And this will always be a favorite episode because of that.
But don't you dare intercut this with me, pictures of me freaking out. That's so good.
Yeah.
And
one of my other cools is just
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say one of my other cools was just Joel's performance in this episode, walking that line between like too cool to care and just pure unfiltered rage at all times. Like, yeah, I think Jeff, like, we don't get a lot of like really angry Jeff, and sometimes it's played for laughs, but like other than that moment, like I'm like scared of Joel at the end of the episode when he's like attacking Pierce, like the way they're literally like Troy's like really pulling him off, because
I was scared of him when he said I will beat
he's
you.
like,
I will beat you. And the pause after you said I will beat you, I was like, I think I just got hit.
And there will be nothing funny or madcap about it.
I have a question. How and this is going to jump ahead for season 4 in when Jeff actually meets his parents, his dad. Do you think that is a payoff for this episode? Do you think him actually meeting his dad is a decent payoff?
I had a tie-in with Britta on both of those too, and so if you don't mind me starting the answer, I had pictured that episode in my brain so hard for so long. I think we all did. Like, what is it going to be like when Jeff meets his father? That I was initially disappointed because my headcanon, right, didn't match. But I've gone back and watched, and James Brolin really is a phenomenal cast for that character. Like, he's just such a consummate actor, and he picks up on Joel's mannerisms and stuff that when I go back, the only part of that episode that really disappoints me is the whole B plot with his brother. Not because it's bad. It feels like a community episode, but it doesn't match the tone of the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
But what I do think ties that episode together the most is Britta, because we see in both episodes where Jeff meets his father that Britta's the one trying to couch it and frame it for him. Like, this is, you know, the kind of conversation you might have or whatnot. She's not as good at it at this point, right? They have that wonderful scene where they play act each other's parents, and it's ridiculous, especially when you then see her relationship with her parents. You get why she interacts with a parent like that, right? But by the time she gets to season 4, her psych major must be working in some way. She's much more measured with it. She really gets to him, and it sets up that relationship moving forward, like when he's going to graduate earlier than all of them, that she ends up really being that person that gets him because she's had her own family shit. And I love that episode where he meets his father, because it gives Britta that moment to actually apply her major and be respected for it, which we never get for her. And so, like, getting that Britta for the win in this episode too. I love that she owns it. She's growing. She's recognizing problems with herself, but she's recognizing her merit. And we don't get that enough from Britta.
Nice. Well said.
Thanks.
Love it. Yeah.
nailed it.
I'm sorry I had to go through a whole thing not knowing that was James Brolin. Like, I was first. Also, yeah.
Until right now.
Thanos'
whenever I heard
dad?
yeah, I'm saying, I was like, the father of Thanos is Jeff Winger's dad. So canonically, Jeff and Thanos are brothers.
And canonically, Barbara Streisand is his stepmother. So that's pretty cool as well.
like, just, and the Russos, they have the power. They can do this.
Yeah.
They can do this easily.
Thraxis and Thanos. Oh my God. Oh man.
The crossover of the century. Yeah.
Are there any more cools still lingering out there?
I think we just hit the biggest one. Jeez.
I've gone through all of mine. Yeah.
I have an Annie moment, and it's just because I'm Jewish, and so I always appreciate her little teeny tiny moments of that. Sometimes they use it for the cheap joke, but this time, like, she gets so serious with the damn tiara, right? God, it's like she's whispering because it's just like, this is so bad, I can't let anybody else hear it. And it's the one person he's not screwing with. Like, I love that Pierce, for whatever reason, Annie is his daughter. You know, he has his stepdaughter in that first season, I think it's first season episode, and that's a terrible relationship. Ex-stepdaughter, yeah. Former, yeah. And like, he has all these former kids, but Annie's the one he helps with rent. He screws up her apartment, but he fixes it. Like, she really is his favorite. But like, then you have Annie being like, I don't want to be this man's favorite, right? Like, this is not.
What does that mean?
Yeah, but she still meets him on his own terms. Like, we see that later on in season 3 when he's trying to help her with her your rent and stuff. Like, it's Pierce. He's gonna do it imperfectly, but I always feel like with Annie, his intentions are actually good compared to most other characters.
And I feel like she sees that because she's the only one to really defend him at the end of the season. Again, like future spoilers, but she's the only one that really defends him at the end of the season. And then even when she has to come to terms with like, okay, you're just a dick, like that takes a toll on her.
And yet she still gets the tiara at the end. Like, I think she's the only bequeathment that's the same bequeathment.
Yeah, because he just kind of doubles down, just like, you know, like, at this point, really, just take it. Like, I'm dead, you're my favorite, just take it. Like, this episode's kind of pivotal for this. It's really a turning point in this season because this ends the kind of Pierce broken legs pill arc, you know, which was dominated a lot of his arc in the first half of the season. And then it sets up him in the finale, and specifically with the Annie thing, why she would, you know, I mean, along with the drug play episode, like why she would, you know, be the only one to dissent and defend him. Plot wise, it's one of the most important. So are we through cools, or do we have any last ones before we wrap up this episode?
Good.
All right. Yeah. Perfect. This has been a good one. Thank you both for coming on, Holly and Alex. This was a lot of fun.
So much. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. And we are going to have Holly on for our next episode. So come back next week for that. And Alex, we'll have you on again soon. Thanks for filling in at the last minute here.
Sure. Thanks, friends. It was great to see you guys, meet you guys, and check out 6 Seasons of the podcast sometime.
And that's a cool shirt. Can you tell me more about it real quick?
Sure. So Black Heart of St. Paul, STP, is my brother's bar in St. Paul. It's a soccer and drag bar in the, I think it's Midway. It's a part of St. Paul, right near the soccer stadium. They're coming back. The mayor or the mayor just and governor just opened up the city again. So go check them out. It's an awesome place to go see a soccer game or a drag show. What else would you want from a bar?
Porque no las dos.
Nothing else.
Yeah. So thanks for asking.
Holly, do you have any combination soccer bar, drag bars that you need to promote or anything else like that?
No, but I do have a bar here in DC. It's over in Adams Morgan called A League of Her Own, which is a amazing lesbian bar founded by a Hollins University graduate, and Pitchers is the gay bar that's right next to it, and they have a joint area in the middle, and they have sports on and sports themed foods and stuff like that, but it's this really fun, eclectic, non kind of normative space.
Cool.
I really enjoy. I mean, Adams Morgan in general is just phenomenal, but I want to make a plug for that, especially because Hollins University grad, another women's college grad like me, you gotta support us while we still exist, right? So.
Yeah, everyone get your vaccines if you haven't already. Let's make this all possible. Support these places in a safe way. I've got my shot now, so I'm good to go. I'm very excited that we all got this. So yeah, I wish I still had the Band-Aid on from 2 weeks ago, so I could
like the I voted sticker,
but that would be kind of gross.
Just keep replacing it. That's fully good.
All right.
And you can follow SGC_podcast on Twitter for updates about our show, and links to things that have been mentioned, 6 seasons, all that stuff will be in the description of this episode. So click those, and that's easier than me saying all of them. Okay. Point. We're on YouTube now, so I can point to things. Woo. Yeah. All right, cool. And until next time, 6 seasons and a movie.
6 seasons in a movie.
6 seasons in a movie.
I guess do I have to say it too?
Well, I shouldn't have said it. My bad.
No, that's a Brit thing.